right. What's going on, 3DMJers? I just wanted to actually take some time to talk a little bit about someone besides myself and the 3DMJ team, which, although it pains me to do so, I think has some value just to give you guys some perspectives outside of the four coaches. So this is actually my coach, Coach Storey. He's an Olympic weightlifting coach here in New Zealand, where I'm at the Millennium Institute of Sport and Health, and he is the coach of the North Sport weightlifting team. And the reason why I wanted to bring him on to talk to you guys today was just because I've been spending so much time talking about nutritional details, training details, answering questions related to what your macros should be and all this, when really I think probably the biggest benefit that I give to people who decide to work with me is more the coaching relationship and helping them to plan goals, get positive reinforcement, get feedback, and get an objective eye that is really difficult to do for yourself. And you know, I'm one of those people who's aware that I can't coach myself. It doesn't matter, you know, what I know or how long I've been in the game or that I've been lifting for a decade. It has much more to do with the fact that I'm too emotionally attached to what I'm doing, being myself. So I consider Adam a fantastic coach, and I just wanted to bring him on and give you guys some perspective on why I work with him and what he does. So first off, welcome.
Thank you.
If you could just kind of sell yourself a little bit here.
Well, I think Eric's done quite a good job, but yeah, I mean, as you said, my name's Adam. I've been head coach in North Sport here, based in New Zealand since 2008. Also been a New Zealand weightlifting coach also since 2008. So in that time, I managed to take teams over to the Commonwealth Games, World Champs, and also the Olympics last year. So I guess some key achievements from a coaching perspective: managed to get 2 silver medals at the Commonwealth Games in 2010. In terms of the Olympics, Richie Patterson last year got 14th placing, which was actually the highest New Zealand placing since the 1984 LA Games.
When we were one.
Yeah, so it's actually a huge achievement in that sense as well. But in terms of a New Zealand record perspective as well, since 2008, these lifters here at North Sport have achieved over 180 New Zealand records, which is it's not a light feat.
No, it's not. And so just to put in perspective, Adam is what you call a world-class Olympic level coach, and in the States, it's just something that's very hard to get access to. And the reality is that I'm a ranked beginner when it comes to Olympic lifting, yet I can sit there and train alongside people who have been to the Olympics, like, well, let's see who was there yesterday. Forgetting Mark is there. He competed in the Beijing Olympics, and Richie Patterson. We used to be in the gym earlier before he split off. But I mean, you've got people like me alongside medal winners, and the kind of the attention and the differentiation, coaching, and the relationship, and just the team atmosphere is something that I reckon is hard to find. And what do you attribute that to? How do you think you're able to develop that diversity of coaching?
Yeah, it has been interesting. Like some coaches in the past have opted to sort of go for more of a segregated approach in terms of, you know, there's a high performance squad, there's a development squad, there's an intermediate squad. In terms of overall club progression, I felt that was quite limited because people almost siloed into their own little worlds as such. So what I did is I tried to essentially create that whole integrated team atmosphere, which I felt has improved overall performance.
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that is almost a lost art in individual sports like Olympic weightlifting, or bodybuilding, or powerlifting. Is that realizing that, you know, even though they're individual sports, so much goes into preparation to compete that there is a lot that we're missing out by not looking at it as in the team atmosphere as much as we can. And one thing I can say is that my adherence, my allegiance to the 3D muscle training athletes and to the North Sport weightlifting athletes is something that really benefits me on a sociological, spiritual, and performance level. It's hard to have a bad workout when you have a supportive coach there, teammates, and they're having good workouts, and vice versa. You know, if you can be a lightning rod for support to those around you when they're having bad workouts, it can bring up the whole atmosphere. And anyone who's watched Pumping Iron, you can just look at, even historically back in individual sports like bodybuilding, the culture that was around Venice Beach bodybuilding and in certain gyms, or like super training, or all these kind of famous gyms. It's not just that they're good coaches or good athletes. It's that they have developed a culture and a niche and almost a tribe that promotes an enhanced level of performance for everybody.
Definitely.
So on to the topic of coaching. What do you think are some of the most important aspects of coaching? I think just to give you perspective on the viewers, they hear me talking almost from the sports science side of things a lot.
Yep.
But what I think is lost is really the psychological, behavioral, and interrelationship between athletes and their coach that is important. And I wanted to kind of get your perspective. Like, what do you see as your philosophies and values as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think you pretty much hit it on the head. I mean, it's about developing those true relationships between coach and athletes. Like, I mean, in some coach-athlete relationships, I've seen a lot of friction develop, which is not advantageous to performance for anyone in terms of anything. So, actually, as part of my PhD thesis, like for one of my studies, I mean, I was fortunate enough to basically do my whole thesis around competitive weightlifting and their adaptations.
The guy's basically got his doctorate in weightlifting. Just want to point that out. Go ahead.
But in one of the studies, what I did, just as a bit of a side measurement, what I was doing is assessing changes in gene expression in response to training loads. I mean, from a physiological perspective, and that was quite full on. But in the same study, what I did on the other end of the spectrum was to assess psychological changes during periods of overload and recovery training. So through the DALDA questionnaire, I mean, the DALDA questionnaire, basically what it does is it quantifies signs and symptoms of stress, but also sources of stress. So, stresses inside the gym, outside of the gym, family life, study.
The DALDA is the Daily Analysis of Life Demands for Athletes. So it's basically a questionnaire where, as he's saying, it asks you a bunch of stuff about your stress levels and where they might be related to. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, that was, to do the genomic analysis, what was really informative of how these lifters are adapting physiologically. I mean, the DALDA, it's so simple to do, but provided so much information, and from there I could really get to know my lifters, what's happening outside of their lives, or outside of the gym, should I say. Right. And just, I think, for coaches out there, just to be able to really get to know their lifters inside and outside of the training environment will be, one of the keys to success.
Definitely. There's something I tell my guys a lot, which is stress is stress is stress. Meaning that a high volume training week or a high volume, like if you're doing your exams or your finals, or if you get stuck in traffic every day, or if you're having a rocky relationship with your significant other, all these things have and elicit a stress response from the body. And if, as a coach, you're only looking at what is happening in your training paradigm or your nutritional coaching and all that, you're really missing what's happening in the other, probably the greater portion of the day and the week that you're not thinking about. And I think it's incredible that you're focusing on that, because I think a lot of coaches just try to keep the blinders on and just look at what they're manipulating.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to sort of tell your athletes to, what do you've got outside of the gym, just leave it at the door when you step in, and when you're in training mode. But, easier said than done, and, a lot of these lifters will bring in their baggage from outside, and you've got to appreciate that and deal with it, and adjust training accordingly as well. Right.
Another really cool thing, and I'm sure anyone who's been involved in sports, especially in, say, high school in the States, can appreciate, is that I don't think Adam has ever yelled at me or given me ultimatums or any kind of negative reinforcement. And, coming from a military background, and then also having I did play a year of football. It was terrible. Or gridiron, if you're from where you guys are here. I'm used to a very authoritative coaching style, and I'm not sure that's something. Well, I'll tell you what, I think it's terrible. I don't use it at all myself, and I think it's very interesting that you're able to use a non-authoritative approach yet still maintain the respect and the honesty and the communication from your athletes that you do, and you also couldn't call probably most of your athletes friends, and I think there's almost this kind of outdated belief that there needs to be a very, very segregated relationship, and certainly you do have to pay attention to your biases, and when you are a coach, you can influence someone in ways, and you want to be respectful of that and not take advantage of it. But at the same time, I think the relationship that you carry is very, it's not old school. And what would you say influences that decision?
Well, I mean, I was fortunate enough to observe, many different coaches from around the world. I mean, we had an ex-Finnish coach, coaches that were from a German influence, Chinese coach coming in as well. So again, different coaching styles, different results. In terms of being that sort of authoritarian type approach, I mean, that's never been my style. I always tell my lifters that I'll forever push you as hard as you need to be pushed, but I'll never pull you. And if a lifter is not motivated, I'm having to yell at them to try and get them to get to an event, get the performance targets. Well, it's not the lifter actually doing the work. I mean, it's me trying to do the work for them. So as I said, I'll always push as hard as I need to, but I won't be able to pull the lifter and get them across the line, so to speak. They have to have that inherent self-motivation as well, and that's what I always try and instill and teach you guys as well, just to sort of be accountable for your own training. And I mean, you shouldn't have to be sort of almost like a school teacher student environment where someone's always going to yell at you.
And I think sometimes the approach of treating your athletes like children makes them step into that role. If they're no longer accountable to themselves and they're accountable to their coach, then it creates a dynamic that probably produces worse compliance. But if you can have a coach who gets someone intrinsically motivated and supports that, and helps them realize, hey, you're not accountable to me, you're accountable to your goals and yourself, and I'm here to support that. Then you can avoid those weird relationships where you start seeing them as your father or some kind of any other kind of transference that may have existed prior. So yeah, I tend to agree completely, and I can say from the athlete perspective and the coach perspective, these are things that I benefited from, both treating my athletes like adults and like my peers, and both being treated that way by you. It certainly influenced me. Another question I wanted to ask you, because a lot of our viewers are bodybuilders and powerlifters, or just general fitness and physique enthusiasts, is how do you go about recruiting for Olympic weightlifting, and what kind of challenge is it to take someone who might have a strength background or a bodybuilding background and bring them into weightlifting? What are the common issues, and how often do you have to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess being a minority sport within New Zealand, we don't have the luxury of sort of doing a full screening approach and sort of turning people away as such. If people express an interest in Olympic lifting, we'll take them on board, open hands.
Despite their ineptitude,
But in terms of recruiting, what we do is I do a stringent approach in terms of secondary school or teenage kids. So what I'll be looking for is basically coordination skills, flexibility, and just in general strength and power attributes. So in terms of vertical jump ability and things like that. So I mean, that's where I can be a little bit picky with who I get on board. But I mean, if we've got people such as yourself coming from a strength background, I guess the biggest challenge is making sure that people appreciate that regardless of their previous training age, when they step into Olympic lifting, they could be basically age zero. So it's about sort of putting all those preconceived ideas aside for one point in time. I mean, the issue is, obviously their strength level is going to be up here, technique's going to be down there, so it's about trying to obviously marry those two together, which, to be honest, you've done exceptionally well.
Thank you.
Patience has been your key, I think.
Or the attempt at patience, at least.
Yeah, but it's worked well. I mean, it's always a challenge. I deal with a lot of rugby players as well, semi-professional and professional players. Very, very big boys, 110, 120 kilo, very strong. But sometimes it's hard for them to put their egos aside and sort of just take a step back and learn the technique. But they get it.
Okay. And as a final, if any of our viewers do want to get into Olympic weightlifting, how would you suggest they break into it? Because it's one of those sports where you can't just go pick it up after watching videos, at least not effectively. I felt, and the reason why I've had a coach ever since I started back in the States with Chip Conrad, what's up man, and now with Adam, is because I lack the technical skill. So how would you suggest someone go about who's interested in getting to Olympic weightlifting? Do they need a coach, and if they do, how would they find a good one?
Yeah, most definitely you need a coach. I mean, it's the age of the internet. I mean, there's millions upon millions of videos out there. People breaking it down in terms of technique, progressions, actually quite succinctly on the internet. But I mean, it's I very much liken weightlifting to golf. You know, golf, extremely technical sport. You know, and a lot of people can think that they'll go to a driving range and they can hit a ball like Tiger Woods, but no, they can't. So people come to the gym, they think they can lift weights, but no, they can't. So I guess I can't stress enough the importance of coaching, especially with weightlifting. Finding a coach, I guess it's a matter of just looking for a local club.
Right. I guess there is one benefit to CrossFit. There are more gyms where you can actually do the Olympic lifts, but you do need to be discerning with getting a good Olympic lifting coach.
Yeah. I mean, it's I mean, you're right. I mean, the CrossFit in terms of their teaching progressions, I mean, they've got a very good broad general base. So I think for a starting background, I mean, that could be sufficient for a lot of people.
Okay.
But I mean, generally, like CrossFit affiliates these days are typically associated with a pure weightlifting club as such. So I mean, you can always get that referral network as well.
So yeah, might not be a bad idea to look up your local CrossFit gym and then find out where the guy who actually is teaching the Olympic lifting, maybe where he got trained, and then kind of once you've done the coaching with that person, finding out maybe where's the next place to go to, unless you of course get married to the whole CrossFit tribe and go that route, which is fine, no judgment, at least not on camera. So yeah, I think that's a good way to go, but it does sound like it's one of those sports that it probably wouldn't be a good idea to try to be completely self-taught.
No, I mean, no. I mean, it really does depend, you know, where you want to go with it. But again, you know, I just can't stress enough how it's, as I said, like learning a technical sport like gymnastics or golf. Yeah. You can watch videos to Africa, but you know, you won't be able to get the finer technical points from that third-person point of view. And again, I can't stress, you know, the importance of patience. I mean, it's some of my New Zealand lifters have been lifting for the New Zealand team for 6 to 8 years, but they're still developing their technique. And that's not a discredit to the lifter themselves. It's just that there's just so many little intricate ins and outs that we can always improve.
10,000 hours before you become an expert?
10,000 hours, man.
Yeah, and that, even that we train, so I think, this is just to put this in perspective, just how much this is a technical versus a muscular overload type of training. How many hours would you say your more advanced lifters per week train?
Per week, in their prime, I mean, they're doing 2 sessions a day, up to 6 days a week. So,
Hour-long sessions or 2-hour-long sessions?
Morning session will be anywhere between 1.5 hours to 2 hours, and then evening session you're looking anywhere between 2 to possibly 3 in the evenings as well. So I mean, it's, you know, around sort of 4 or 5 hours training a day.
6 days a week?
6 days a week.
So we're talking 24 to 30 hours a week of training. Now, to the bodybuilders out there, I'm sure you're just getting these visions of parts of your body literally falling off while holding dumbbells. And the powerlifters probably just shaking uncontrollably while being crushed by a squat rack. But there is a big difference between Olympic lifting training and something I've come to find. And but I wanted to point that out just to kind of give you guys an idea of how technically demanding Olympic lifting is compared to the more traditional strength or physique lifts. And I know for me, before I had any dreams of getting into Olympic lifting, the powerlifters and the bodybuilders, we would almost kind of look at the Olympic lifters kind of like these aliens of the gym.
Yeah.
Like, how are you doing when I can back squat over your head? You know.
It's an interesting paradigm, and it's exactly what I mean. Essentially, my whole thesis, that's the whole crux of it. It's you know, these athletes training, and I can't stress the same major muscle group exercises. I mean, we're talking about back squatting in the morning, front squatting in the evening. Same major muscle groups utilised within the same day. So I mean, essentially, my whole thesis was looking at how these males and females are able to adapt and recover so rapidly between, you know, session 1 and session 2, and following periods of overload and periods of underload. You know, it's just I mean, it's a complex complex thing.
I think it also just goes to show that sometimes when we stick to the same paradigms of training, we assume those are the adaptive capacities of the human body, but they probably don't have as many limits as we think they do.
No, not at all. I mean, you look at the ACCM's, or American College of Sports Medicine's, current recommendations for advanced trained individuals, and they say, train up to 6 times a week, alternating muscle groups, that kind of thing. But I mean, you look at, as I said, the Olympic lifting model, complete contrast of what's currently recommended, especially for strength and power athletes. It's despite these seemingly excessive training loads, I mean, these guys and girls are continually improving their performance, which is just a very interesting concept.
Yeah. Now that said, I can't emphasize enough, it's not like we're going in there and doing maxes on squat, deadlift, and the other strength lifts every day. I mean, I'll have days where I do push, press, snatch, and just all technique lifts. And I probably don't do maximal back squats more than 2-3 times a week at most. So, which is still a lot compared to what most of you guys are used to. But I think, some of the lessons from Olympic lifting has also started to influence the bodybuilding and powerlifting culture. There's starting to be the awareness that more frequency and less volume of training the lifts is actually helpful for powerlifters, and we're finding that as far as muscle growth, getting in there and just kind of turning on that machinery for hypertrophy is more important, and that frequency is actually kind of one of those key components. So lessons to be learned, but also be aware that it's a very different training style. So those of you who want to get into it, be aware that you're not just learning new lifts, it's a completely new technique and paradigm.
And I guess one thing to stress as well, I mean, with the double day training structure, I mean, that is reserved for the more senior advanced lifters. I mean, it's typically after a year and a half of solid training under their belt, will they then progress onto a modified double day type of structure. So it's not as if they're rocking in off the street and straight away boom, they're onto that double day 6 day a week structure.
Yeah. So for some perspective, I've been Olympic lifting now for 4 or 5 months, something like that.
Yeah.
Same with my wife, and she's gone to 5 days a week, and I'm still on 4 days a week, and we are also blended with powerlifting. I imagine maybe by the end of the year we'll both be doing 5 or 6 training sessions a week, something like that. But not the 12 that would be advanced that the guys are on. Cool. Well, Adam, that was the main stuff I wanted to talk about. I appreciate your time. Is there any closing things you want to bring up as far as either what you're doing, what's going on, or
well, I guess takeaway messages is, Olympic lifting is a fantastic sport to get into, in terms of the crossover benefits to other sports, be it, athletics, rugby, gridiron, football. Just the research behind it is just undoubtable. So weightlifting, if you are interested, as I said, push forward to trying to find a decent coach. But yeah, I mean, keep an eye out for us, North Sport Olympic Weightlifting. Check us out on Facebook. We've got some good things to come, especially with Commonwealth Games building up next year. So we've got a couple of lifters that are really eyeing up some big targets. So it's going to be a good next few months.
Very cool. All right, Adam, well, I appreciate your time. And I'm going to see you in 2 minutes as we go train. And this is Eric Helm signing out. Thank you guys for your time.